Welcome to the Hokie Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Pete B, and I'm here with Ed Williams. Ed, we just had the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. No Hokies, but I was still enjoying some basketball. How you feeling? Who are you rooting for? What do you think of the first couple rounds?
Yeah, I mean, people are upset that there weren't any big Cinderellas, and I get that that's part of the big draw of this tournament, and why that's the case. We can all debate as much as we want. I don't think we can draw too many definitive conclusions from a one weekend sample, a four-day sample. I don't think we could, you know, the NCAA tournament is ruined crowd. I think your sample size is a little small to make a claim like that, but we'll see how things progress as the years move forward. But overall, I mean, I know ratings were really high. You can attribute that to any number of things. There was a ton of SEC teams in the tournament. I'm sure that had a big piece of why there were so many eyeballs on it. Gambling more prevalent than ever. Obviously, that plays a huge factor as well. But it was a great first weekend of the tournament, and I think, man, we're in for some good matchups in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. There's some big time programs still playing ball, and um, in some ways it's sad that there aren't any Cinderellas, but in other ways it's good because we get to see the real top dogs battle it out for a national title. So
Yeah, that's the benefit of not having upsets is that the later rounds have the best teams, or at least what we think are the best teams throughout the year. If you look at Ken Palm, there's only one team outside of the top 24 that made it to the Sweet 16, and that was Arkansas. And I think they were down at 36, so still not too far down. But everyone else is top 24. I think BYU was the second lowest team. You have some family ties to Maryland. What did you think of their last second shot that game and all that kind of stuff?
yeah, most of my family went to Maryland. Grew up a Maryland fan, so loosely cheering for them as well during this run. That was crazy. They had such bad luck all season with losing on last second shots. I think they had, I want to say three off the top of my head. Last second or last seconds losses
They
in Big
did.
Ten
They had a
play,
couple.
including a half court buzzer beater at home to Michigan State, and then
Yep.
their loss in the Big Ten tournament to Michigan. So I guess some of the ball luck fell their way this time, and that'll happen when you have a complete freak of a freshman in Derek Queen. That guy has gotten better and better as the years gone on. His mock draft status has gotten higher and higher as the years gone on. Man, that Montverde team last year, unbelievable. And kid from Baltimore off the glass sends Maryland to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2016. So good for them. That was awesome. And I think they could give Florida a hard time. It'll be a good game on Thursday night.
Was he the one with the quote, "He do pay us the money"?
Yeah,
My how things have changed, and that's going to link
he
into
had
some of this.
that quote was good. But did you see it? Willard's quote about in the huddle.
Uh, uh, Refresh my memory because I think I saw it, but
Kevin
I'm not. I'm
Kevin
not
Willard
pulling.
said that he calls timeout. They go into the huddle, and he says, "Who wants the ball?" And Derek Queen goes, "Give me that mf'er."
Okay,
And
I must have missed
and
that one. That's
and Willard
great.
goes, "All right, well, you got it," and he got it. So good for the freshman. Kid's got braces, and he's hitting fallaways for the win in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Unbelievable stuff.
What I was finishing saying on the point of the paying the money is we're going to
Mm.
get to portal stuff because we had some guys hop in the portal for the Hokies. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. Last thing just on the tournament was that the ACC, other than Duke, didn't acquit itself that great. Most notably, Clemson, to a lesser degree, Louisville, who a lot of teams thought might be able to knock off the number one seed in their bracket. They lose round one, basically first thing out of the gates. And then Clemson just has the most miserable first half versus McNeese. And so, no, the ACC didn't have a good year. And we kept kind of relying on what we saw last year in the tournament. Like, okay, well, let's just wait till tournament time because the ACC will come to play. And other than Duke, who's been one of the best teams in college basketball all year, they didn't really show up, though UNC did get a win
Yeah,
in the first four.
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the ACC had a good year. Excuse me, but yeah, that Clemson thing was kind of predictable. That was a big time coaching mismatch there. If you really look at it, I know Brownell had a great year, but I'll take Will Wade 10 times out of 10. And then The Louisville game, I mean, that first half of that game, Creighton was unconscious. That was unbelievable.
Hmm.
They went on like a 19-2 run in that first half. Louisville played a much better second half, but it was, all the damage was done in that one stretch, and Creighton just buried them in Rupp Arena, an hour and a half from Louisville's campus. Pretty crazy.
Right. And they were booing him, I think.
Yeah, and then the
Will
North
Wade.
Carolina thing, like people were very upset that they got in the NCAA tournament. And I know that they were extremely piss poor in that category of Q1. But when you took a step back and looked at all of those bubble teams' resumes, it wasn't as egregious as the internet will let you believe. For example, Texas in quad 1, 2, and 3, add them all together, was under 500, and they got in the NCAA tournament and ultimately lost to Xavier in
And
the
there were
in
a
the
couple
second
teams
round.
that were under 500 in SEC play that got into the
Right, and
tournament.
even just I'm just talking bubble specific, like
Yeah.
Texas, under 500 in the first 3 quads, whereas North Carolina was much better. They didn't have any Q3 losses, and yeah, I think they had 1 Q2 loss. And you look at Xavier, had the same problem Carolina had. They were 1-9 in Q1. So it was a very flawed bubble across the board, and I think it just hammers home the point that we don't need to expand this thing, even though we all know we're ultimately going to, because money drives everything. But we don't need to go past 64.
Yes. No, I totally agree. The tournament is, for all intents and purposes, perfect. I was trying to quickly look up where UNC came in the net rankings, but
It
what I
was
thought
like
was
36th, I think.
right. And so the funny thing about the 1 and 12 versus Q1, well, isn't the whole point of the net to get a high ranking? And they had the number 36 ranking. So, like, what does it matter if they didn't perform well versus Q1 if their net ranking is like,
Here, I have it here. I can read it to you. So Carolina was 36th in the net. They were 1-12 in quad 1, but they were 8-0 in quad 2 and 7-1 in Q3. Whereas Texas was 39 in the net, 7-10 in quad 1, 3-5 in Q2, and 2-0 in quad 3. And then you go down the rest of the bubble, the teams that didn't get in. I mean, Boise State was 43rd in the net, Xavier 45th, Colorado State 50th, San Diego State 52nd, Indiana 54. And then I don't know where West Virginia fell in that, but they got screwed. But I
and
don't think
not,
they got
and
screwed. My overall
ultimately,
point
like,
is they didn't get screwed by Carolina. They got screwed by
exactly.
pick one of the
And
3. They were all pretty soft. So
going to strictly to the net to look why you should get in is also stupid. But if you're gonna point to quad 1 wins, which is from the net, why wouldn't we just look at the net ranking? And just
yeah,
all of it is very strange, and you take out all the nuance when you go to one criteria such as quad 1 wins. I'm not vouching for North Carolina. I didn't care whether they got in or not.
yeah.
We are ACC, so I guess it's residually good for us if we get more teams in, but like I really didn't care. I just thought the
Well,
conversation is silly when it comes back to what was their net ranking. Well, it was pretty damn good.
yeah, and you see like those bottom level. The SEC was great this year. But those bottom level SEC teams, they had a quick run in this tournament. I mean, Vandy
Hmm.
gone, see ya. Texas, see ya. I have it right next to me, the bracket. Who Mississippi State, thanks for coming out. All these like lower level SEC teams that we were told were super good that got in, they weren't that good. Missouri, Drake knocked them out, beat them by 10. The one that overperformed was Arkansas, but we kind of knew that Arkansas was stacked. They just have been injured throughout the year. It took a long time to gel, but we kind of knew Arkansas was a good team roster wise. And then, so I just, whatever. Overall point is West Virginia got screwed. Not sure it was by North Carolina. And regardless of the situation, we do not need to be expanding this tournament because there's a lot of softies in the bubble anyway.
Yes, no, I totally agree. And we can move on from bubble talk and into VT, although we could, if we want to revisit later, we certainly can.
Yeah.
Last time we chatted about the hoops team was on Two Deep. You came on with Sam and I, and we had just dropped our game to Cal in double overtime. We finished 13-19 and 8-12 in the ACZ. It was the worst season for the team in a while. And it's funny to think about it as a whole, when me and you have been discussing it all year long, we've kind of been like, yeah, they overachieved. But if you look at how the team did, it was a bad season. So if you could sum up our team's issues in a word or a sentence, how would you do that, Ed?
Oh, man. I think lack of experience was a big issue. I think that is where a lot of our inconsistencies came. And when this team was playing well, they were a pretty good team and hung in there with some other pretty good teams. But when they weren't, there was just bad stretches. And I think perfect example of that. Just if I was going to hone in on one person to exemplify that, it would be like Brandon Rechsteiner. When he was playing well, he was really good for the Hokies this year. But he would have these just stretches where he just forgot what he was doing. And that would kind of, encompass the whole team. And, lack of a true number one option on the perimeter was a big problem. Lack of a true consistent number one option on the interior, big problem. And then no real interior depth. I mean, you're going from Malaja Poteet, who was your backup center behind Lynn Kidd, becomes your starter, which is fine. But then, the drop off there to Patrick Wessler was pretty significant. Now, he had his moments and actually grades out really well when you look at advanced stats. But, they're just not a lot of consistency kind of across the board. I mean, one night Jaden shoots great. One night Jaden shoots not great. Even Toby Lawal, you could say the same thing. He would have games where he was amazing, and then he'd go on a 2 or 3 game stretch where, things weren't so hot. So just no real consistency, nothing to really kind of hang our hat on when times got tough in games. Then as a result, you just saw inconsistent results from night in and night out. And a team that has some really nice pieces, but needs to ramp things up through the portal heading into next year.
If it was one word, I thought inexperience that you said initially was a good word. I'd say undermanned. Like we just seemed undermanned at multiple positions all year long. And that is due to youth. It's due to people getting kicked off the team right before the season. It's due to a lot of things. And I looked at our highest scorer this year, which is Toby Lawal, and that number was 12.4 points per game. And Lawal really made strides this year. I thought he improved significantly throughout the year from the raw player he was at VCU. But when you're an ACC team and your leading scorer is putting up less than 13 points, that's why you're 6 games under 500. Like that's simply just not enough points from a leading scorer. And he was also our leading rebounder with 7 rebounds per game. I would have thought Elijah would have led in one of those categories. Earlier in the year, I think he was leading us in points and kind of fell off into ACC play. Lawal also tied for the lead in turnovers on the team. And that is something that plagued this team all year long. If you go to all of D1, we were 309th in turnovers per game, meaning it was bad. There was way, way too many. And Rechsteiner was the other leader tied with him. And you said, yes, he showed flashes, but I have a hard time thinking he could string it together defensively, shooting wise, and especially passing wise over 40 minutes. He really couldn't seem to do that. And I'm not trying to kill the lead here, but him and Jaden Young, 2 of the guys we've already talked about, are 2 of them that hopped in the portal. And 2 guys that some of our fans are like, well, that's really disappointing because they were 2 sophomores that played a lot and we were hoping they'd come back and develop more. What are your thoughts on those 2 departures?
I'm actually looking at the portal right now, or on the 24/7 website, just going through our page. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, they're both guys who at times looked really good. Their highs were really high, and then they would have, really, really low lows. I mean, Jaden Young in the ACC tournament obviously really struggled. Brandon Rechsteiner throughout the year had his moments where just brain farts, turnovers, 5 feet up and 5 rows into the bleachers. But like I said, when it's good, it's good. So I'll be curious to see where those guys land. I think there's a lot to like about both of their games. If you're a coach looking through their film as you scroll through the portal, there's a lot to like there. But again, inconsistencies, which is what you'd expect from true sophomores. So it didn't work out at Virginia Tech. No hard feelings, but overall, I think our goal needs to be to upgrade at those 2 spots in the transfer portal, and remains to be seen if we'll be able to do that. I'm actually looking at it. Jaden Young is the 18th ranked shooting guard in the portal right now. Brandon Rechsteiner is the 11th ranked point guard in the portal right now on 24/7.
That doesn't speak too highly of the portal, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to trash those guys. I am not. But
I agree.
Those are 2 two shooting guards, because I'm not even comfortable calling Rex Steiner a point guard at this point, because I'm not sure he can play power conference point guard, at least not as a starter. And Jaden, for as his highs are, his consistency is so lacking. I think he's a borderline conference, like power conference player. I'm not sure that he is. He's a jacker, man. He takes a lot of shots and he misses a lot of shots. He was under 35% from the field this year, not from three, from the field. Under 30% from three. Rex Steiner, who we think is a shooter, also under 30% from three. That's if you're a freshman and you're shooting 35% from the field, okay, maybe you're not used to the rim. It's your first year at school. You're unsure. You're having a hard time in your classes. As a sophomore, to hit under 35% as a shooting guard, there are roughly 1,500, maybe 2,000 better shooters in college basketball than Jaden Young. And so for all the Hokie fans that are worried about him leaving, my advice, don't worry about it. And that's just the fact of the matter. And I'm not a college shooting guard. I'm not trying to be overly mean. I'm just telling you the reality is that he shot us out of that last game. He shot us out of a few games. Now he helped us win a couple games too, but him and Rex Steiner, I love them for being Hokies and choosing the Hokies, but they're really not ACC players, not starters at best. They're bench players in the ACC.
Not on a tournament team, at least. I mean, not on a team that's going to compete for an NCAA tournament spot.
That's what the goal is, right? So that's what our point of reference is.
Yeah, exactly. So got to upgrade at those two spots, and I'm sure I'll just give it back to you because I'm sure you're going to go through the rest of the list.
But. Well, I want to ask you. I looked at Rodney Brown because he was the first one that hopped in, and of all the guys that hopped in, we'll get to the rest. I felt like that one was the guy with the most potential. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I like his game. I think he's got a smooth offensive game and can be a really good player somewhere. I question whoever's in his ear. This will be 3 schools in 3 years. There's not a lot of examples of that working out very well. Joe Bama still's on his fourth school in 5 years, and it's finally sticking for him at VCU. And quite frankly, probably too little too late in terms of having pro prospects for a guy like that. So, look, bouncing around, it is advantageous during that time period, especially right now when player salaries and NIL budgets are just through the freaking roof. These guys, it's advantageous for them to jump around to make a bunch of money in the short term. Now, is it going to help you get to your long-term goals? Probably not. But in the short term, you're going to make a bunch of money for 3 or 4 year window. So there's a lot of guys who you're going to see 3 and 3 years, 4 and 4 years, chasing the bag while they can. And I think Rodney Brown's probably one of those guys. I just, who knows who's in his ear, but I think he was maybe in a position at Virginia Tech where he could have stepped into a really significant role if he could have stayed on the floor. We saw him succeed in spurts at Virginia Tech, and I get it. California kid, maybe wants to go back closer to home. But in general, it just seems like these people who are advising these kids, they're chasing every penny they can get, and they don't care about long-term development. So I wish him the best, but 3 schools in 3 years, good luck to you.
And it confuses me because this has now happened a couple times where a guy goes down with an injury mid-ACC play, and then they don't play again, and then they transfer. So were they really hurt, or did they just want to transfer? Like I liked Rodney Brown's game. I thought he was a perfect fit for Mike Young's system. He could shoot at a pretty elite level if he was could have played more, and he could handle the ball in a pinch. And so I was sad to see Rodney go because I thought he could have been a valuable wing piece. Moving to Wessler, who also hopped in, he was kind of someone that our chat would joke about early in the year. And then slowly but surely, he became a valuable bench piece as a big man. And I was hoping that he'd stick around and be a valuable bench piece going forward.
Yeah, he ended up having a pretty good year. I think he was in a position in Blacksburg where we could not go into the next season with him as the starter and have the aspirations we have. I don't think that's a knock on him. I don't think that's dramatic. It would just, we need to go get a real center. And I'm not sure Patrick Wessler would beat out Christian Gurdick for the second spot and the center position. I think he'd probably start out ahead of Christian Gurdick and get pretty quickly passed by the true freshman coming in from Gonzaga. Gurdick's a really good player. He's played extremely high level high school ball. I think, similar to Ben Hammond, the transition from high school to college might not be quite as hard as it is for someone who came from a lower level of high school basketball. So I anticipate Christian Gurdick being someone who pushes for minutes next year. And I think those minutes probably would have come at the expense of Patrick Wessler. So will they go out and find a starter and maybe another backup center? Probably. But I don't
so.
and Gurdick will compete in that room, whoever's in that room. But I don't know if you're Patrick Wessler, you look at that situation and it's something you want to sign up for. You can probably go find more money and more opportunity somewhere else. So at this stage in his career, that makes sense for him. And I don't knock him at all. I think that makes complete sense for him.
For Wessler, being 7 feet tall, it's like being like a mediocre backup quarterback in the NFL. Like someone's going to give you $10 million. If just someone's going to do it because you've got that one thing. And that one thing for Wessler is he's really freaking tall and people need centers. And so he could probably go get some money on the open market. And I wish him the best of luck. As for Ryan Jones, the last guy who hopped in the portal, he was a freshman this past year. You interviewed him before last year.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed like a great kid, someone we were very excited to get, but he dealt with an injury, played just a little bit. What's your thoughts on his departure?
I feel for the kid because it doesn't seem like the knee injury the recovery ever took at a level where he could play a real role at this level in full court basketball. It seems like kind of his skill set and his game shows really well in the half court on the offensive end. He can still do all the things he could do pre-high school knee injury offensively in the half court. But just asking him to get up and down the floor with, the state of his knee injury at the ACC level right now, it just didn't seem like it was something that that was going to be able to work out in the short term. And hopefully he can find somewhere where he can get back to who he was pre that injury. And he'll probably have to go down a level in competition to then come back up later in his high school career, or in his college career rather. But really good kid, really, really good kid, and wish him nothing but the best. Super skilled too. Like it's just unfortunate. But I mean, he couldn't beat out Wessler or Connor Servin, which to me means he couldn't really guard anyone in the full court game. So hopefully he can find a spot.
And I would say in years past, we would have maybe blamed Mike Young for that. Like, hey, he didn't want to play the young 4-star like we've seen so many times. But we saw him play Ben Hammond and Tyler Johnson, especially Johnson, from the get-go and give him tons of minutes. And so it wasn't a youth thing with Ryan Jones. It was probably a variety of things. And
there's never really been a youth thing with Coach Young. He's always played guys when they're ready.
He's always played guys. I remember, well, this is going way back, and you can always pick on these things. I put this thing out on Twitter because it's a conversation people are having. Yet another 4-star under Mike Jones doesn't develop, doesn't stay, and ends up leaving before we even really get to see what he can do. And we've had Maddox and Rodney Rice and Jalen Cone, and Nolly kind of played for a year, but was really Buzz's guy. There's a bunch of them. Bama Seal. And it hasn't worked out. And we've been over this before. And there's always these one-off situations, or it's an NIL thing, or it's a handler thing, or whatever. But it just hasn't worked. And it would be nice if we could get our top high school talent to stick and develop. And going back to Young and Rechsteiner, because these are two guys that played a lot of minutes. And when fans see guys that play a lot of minutes, they want them to stay because they're familiar. And they want them to develop. But I think, in my opinion, Ed, and I want to make sure we are at least a little aligned on this, or at least you understand where I'm coming from. I feel that they are replaceable players at the level that Tech wants to go to. If we want to be a tournament team, we can find replacements for Jaden Young and Brandon Rechsteiner and not skip a beat.
Yeah, well, We'll talk again in 3 weeks and see where they end up.
Okay, then. So graduating, in addition to losing those guys we just mentioned in the portal, is Poteet and Ben Burnham.
Yeah.
And Ben Burnham ended up having a nice little season after a slow start. That was one of my preseason picks for MVP, but he will be moving on. So who does that leave? That hasn't hopped in the portal. Not that we've heard any confirmations of guys coming back yet, but that leaves Toby Lawal, Ben Hammond, Tyler Johnson, Jaden Shute, Connor Severin, who played just a little bit, and then our two incoming freshmen, Christian Gerdak and Sincere Jones. Those guys I just mentioned, if they haven't hopped in the portal yet, are you expecting them to stick around?
No. Or yes,
Okay.
sorry. Yes, I'm expecting them to stick around.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
Scared
it's
me
hard
for a
to
second.
say. It's hard to say because it's the what 20. We're recording on the night of the 25th. The portal officially opened yesterday, the 24th. So it's still early. Um, but the expectation is we've seen the last of the Hokies jumping in. Now let's hope it stays that way, but that's the loose expectation I'm operating under. And it's a good little nucleus. I mean, you just listed some good players, and the guys, quite frankly, from my perspective, that's the top four I want to keep. Mawal, Johnson, Hammond, Shoot. That's the top four I wanted to keep. I could go with or without the rest of them, depending on price tag. And so far, the answer is without. Connor Servin, I think, has the ability to get another year if he wants to fight for it or apply for it. I don't really know how all that works, but I think he can maybe go get another year.
I think he can stick around if he wants to.
Um, Honestly, would love to have him. Yeah, that's a great kind of end of the bench filler guy to have as scholarships go to 15. So we'll see how that situation unfolds, but he could also decide to hang it up. I don't really know what his plans are. He could go either way. But yeah, and then you have the two freshmen, the two, fringe 4 stars. I think they're both technically 4 stars. Um,
Maybe
Gerdick,
on
who
one serve. Oh, yeah. On 247 in house, they are 4 stars.
yeah, Gerdick, who I really like. I'm really high on. I know other opposing coaches who are highly thought of around the country were very complimentary of that commitment to the Hokies. So, really highly thought of player, played in a great league at Gonzaga. Um, and then Jones was in a typical Mike Young and co elite scout. Committed as a 3 star, quickly ballooned to a 4 star, has stayed there. He's 6'7", kind of listed as a power forward, but I think he'll ultimately play out on the wing for the Hokies. Needs the jump shot to develop a little bit, but super physically ready. Maybe not quite to the extent Tyler Johnson came in terms of physically ready for this level, but if he ain't, he's pretty close. Bigger than Tyler Johnson. So two really skilled players coming in as true freshmen. And then we'll see how we can fill out around it. I know there's been reports of, us talking to all kinds of people, and there's going to be all kinds of conversations. And the portal is a scary place. So we'll see how it all unfolds over the next couple weeks. But it's a solid nucleus to build around.
Yeah.
I think it's exactly what we would have wanted in terms of handpicking the guys that stay, and then now the question is, what can we do around them? And we'll find out in the next 30 days or so.
This starting point, as opposed to where we were a year ago when we were losing all of our team, is so much better.
So much
Like
better.
to bring back Ben Hammond and Tyler Johnson and Toby alone. I like Shoot. I think you're even higher on him than I am, and I know he dealt with the sickness this year, but he has tremendous upside ability based
Mhm.
on his pedigree to really contribute. And Toby he is just starting his basketball journey. He's only been playing organized basketball for so long. So I'm excited about those guys. And now let's move to desires in terms of the portal. If you had to choose, what do you want to grab the most? Like, oh, Ed, you can go and pick, this position or this depth on the team. Like, what do you want to go for first in the portal?
A lead guard. Um, a lead guard, I think, is where you have to start. And if you can go find that, whether it's a whether it's a point guard or a two guard who, can fill it up. You got to go find somebody on the outside who scares people, which last year we didn't really have. On certain nights, you had Jaden Young going crazy or Jaden Shoot going crazy, but night in and night out, there was no. The opposing team didn't have to circle anyone on the scout out on the wing or out on the perimeter for us, and I think you got to go find that. And then a Grant Basile type big, a big that can play inside and out. I think is something that is super important to pair with Toby Lawal, because of his ability to play inside and out as well. I think if you can have somebody complimentary like a Grant Basile style player, I have some names that haven't entered yet that I would love for them to enter, but we'll see if that takes place. But yeah, those are the two, man. It's the lead guard and it's the starting center that can ideally stretch the floor and complement Toby Lawal really well. And then all of a sudden you're looking at, whoever that guard is, and then Jaden Shoot, Tyler Johnson, Toby Lawal, and a Grant Basile. That's a good team. How you fill in the bench around that, with the freshman and Ben Hammond and a couple other wings that you need to go find to fill in your bench. But if you can get a legit guard and a legit big, you kind of have a 2, 3, and a 4 that can
So,
all play at this level, and we've seen them play at this level.
are you saying that Ben Hammond is not your starting point guard, or you're saying that you want kind of a combo guard to go with him?
Depends. It really depends. I mean, in an ideal world, Jaden Shoot becomes your 6 man, or him and Ben Hammond come off the bench. But if you can get Jaden Shoot to your 6 man spot to come in and fill it up from the outside and go get kind of a combo guard and play him alongside Ben Hammond. I mean, it can all be kind of interchangeable there, but you need a ball handler who can create and scare people a little bit, which we didn't have, and we lost that. And Sean Padula, saw him put on a show in March Madness for Ole Miss.
Yeah, we didn't mention that at the top of the show.
Yeah,
Cracker of the day, cracker of the week,
yeah,
according to
dude,
AB.
Antonio Brown's cracker of the week or whatever. Put on a show the other day. Good for him. But you got to go find that guard, and then the Grant Basile style big man to replace Elijah Poteet, but also pair alongside Toby Lawal stylistically.
I like how you're going with Basile rather than Keve Aluma.
Well, they're very similar. I mean,
yeah,
Basile shot it a little more than Keve did, but they both could step out there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take either skill set. You give me one of those skill sets, I'm good. But
yeah, and so for me, I look at the rebounding numbers at 285 of 360 teams. We definitely need size, and I know Gerdak will come in, and I'm thinking he's going to play, but relying on a true freshman to play too many minutes isn't a great strategy, regardless of how great they are, unless it's Cooper Flag, of course. We need a big. We need a big that can rebound, and we need to get someone who can score. So that kind of goes to what you were saying. Like, we need someone that we can rely on, because as I said, I love Toby. I think he could become a 16, 17, 18 point a night guy. I do. But you need more points than that. You need someone who can score, and I'm not sure even though I love Ben Hammond, Tyler Johnson, and Jaden Shoot, I need a reliable scorer. And so that's probably coming from the wing. That's probably coming from your two guard. So we got to go get someone that can score the basketball. We got to get someone that can rebound the basketball.
Yeah, and I
then
think
you fill
all
out
three
the
of those
wing
guys, you just said are gonna, would take a step up in their development too. Like, you saw Ben Hammond's offensive game start to come on late. Tyler Johnson shot a sneaky good clip from 3 that, I think most fans would surprise them if they looked it up. And then Jaden Shoot, he missed basically 2 full years of basketball, comes back his first full season playing, and had some really high highs, some really good, strong performances. Now, in his second full season back from his injury, can he find a more consistent stride to those highs? That's the next step for him. And I think you'll see that, because when he looked comfortable for the Hokies this year, he was a really good player. I think it's lost on people a little bit how much time he really missed before this season with Virginia Tech. I mean, he hadn't played in like organized ball in almost 2 full years. So,
Jeez.
if he can build on this year and find some level of consistency, I think he's a player that will be really happy is playing in Blacksburg. So yeah, it's the starting point. I think your earlier remark, the starting point compared to last year in the portal, night and day. So if you're able to go find a Ben Burnham type under the radar guy who ended up playing really well for you in the ACC, find a Toby Lawal who takes the next step, and you add that to where we're starting from right now. That's a big difference than from where we were starting from last year when they uncovered a couple of gems. If they can uncover a couple of gems again and add it onto this, we'll be in a decent spot.
And we already had the tweet from Jeff Goodman saying that Mike Young will have more NIL. We also have the House case decision coming down next month, which means we should have 3 to 4 million in funds for the basketball team potentially. So there should be some money to fill these gaps. And just looking at Jaden Chute's game log, he had a stretch in the middle of ACC play where he went a dozen or more points in 5 of 7 games.
Yeah.
So he was doing really well before he got came down with whatever flu or whatever he had. But
One quick
that's
comment on
yeah,
your, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Your NIL remark there. I think I cautioned this on Too Deep, but my concern was that yes, while it's better, it still might not be great or good. It might be adequate, but I don't know that it'll be good because the market's going crazy, and you're already seeing it. Kevin Willard said today, as he continues to try to do whatever it is he's trying to do with Villanova. I don't think he's going to go there, but maybe he will. But he said on the radio hit today, the transfer portal is crazy. There are kids asking for 2 to 3 million right now. The money has exploded because we have no guardrails. We have no rules. It's been as badly of a rule implementation as ever, and agents are taking advantage of it. So you've got kids asking for 2 to 3 million dollars. With Virginia Tech's budget, that's 2 players. Yeah.
Yeah, I also would say that if you look at what a second round pick in the NBA makes as a rookie, it's like 1.1 million.
Yes.
So this money, talking about anything over $1 million for these players, and yes, some are worth it. I'm sure Cooper Flagg was well worth it, but that you're getting into a territory that like there's already a market that pays them, and that's the NBA, and they don't pay that much. And I know like there to some schools the value is worth it. There are limitations for Virginia Tech. I think we could pay $1 million for a player, but we can't pay multiple millions to any player.
No, we could probably pay 1 million for one guy, and then have to fill in around the edges. If it's 4 million, if it's 5 million, whatever our total budget is, it'll be better, and it'll be better relative to the standing of the rest of the landscape than it was a year ago. I just don't think it'll be maybe quite as high in the pecking order of the ACC as maybe we thought previously, because NC State, Will Wade ain't coming there for a mediocre budget. Same with Ryan Odom at Virginia. I mean, those two are coming into those jobs being promised that they've got really good resources, and I'm pretty sure they will. And I've seen what Louisville put out. They're expected to spend between $8 and $10 million on their roster next year.
Maybe they'll make it past the first round if they spend all that money.
Well, but right there, that's my expectation there would be UVA, Louisville, NC State, add in Duke, Carolina. Who knows what Syracuse does? There's a lot of schools in the league that are going to push their chips in on basketball in an era where achieving high-level football success is probably a higher bar to clear. So the ACC, I would kind of expect the ACC in general to allocate more percentage of rev share to basketball than some of these other leagues. Now, the other leagues have a lot of extra cash that they'll fill in around the edges with too. But I do think there are a bunch of ACC schools that are going to push the chips in on basketball, maybe at a higher level than you would have originally thought.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we were discussing this on the thread today that there are simply a lot of power schools in basketball because you have to add the Big East. You add Notre Dame is in the ACC for basketball. It's and a lot of like teams like Memphis are just really competitive. Yeah, are exactly. And there's teams that don't have football budgets to worry about outside of the power conferences. So where does Virginia Tech slot in money when it gets to those 80 plus teams, probably not so high. Now, what for us and the portal, I think that we're going to end up waiting because there obviously some guys are going to get these massive paydays. They are. But high school guys have to be paid that are coming out. Then you have to pay the first portal wave to your Kansases and your Dukes and whoever else. And then money, like the money pool starts to shrink. We see this in NBA free agency all the time. It's like all of a sudden, Kelly Oubre is still sitting there. He's a very good player, and you can grab him for a lot less. And so I think for Virginia Tech fans, it's going to be kind of a wait and see thing. Hopefully we get the word soon enough that at least Toby is locked in and we get him whatever deal we have to get him, because I would have to imagine he'll be our highest paid player. But after that, portal wise, it's a wait and see game. I mean, you gotta, regardless of whether we have the house case money, we're bargain hunting, man. I know less bargain hunting than maybe last year, but still bargain hunting.
Yeah, it's just like we are in high school recruiting. We rely on our scouting ability. This staff has done an incredible job at that. See Sean Padula, see Ben Hammond, Tyler Johnson, Hunter Couture, guys over the years who were underappreciated in high school, had good college careers. Even the guys who have left, go on to have good college careers, most of the time at a little bit of a lower level. But, guys that this staff identifies and brings in usually have good college basketball careers. And, now we just have to take that same ability and apply it to the portal and find the Toby Lawals and the Ben Burnhams who you can bring in at a better rate that we can afford, and they can play at this level. And we saw that this year with those two in particular, and we'll have to replicate that this portal wave as well.
Yes, sir. All right, well, let's take a step away from the men and talk about the ladies. They made a postseason tournament, and unfortunately, their season ended on Sunday in Castle. They lost to Texas Tech 69-59. And I believe they finished 19-13, so the exact inverse of what the men did. It was a good first year for Coach Duffy, and their portal opened. Was it today that the women's portal opened? But a couple of girls have hopped in. Maya Hazelton, right? That's
Maya Hazelton, yeah.
And then Ramaya White was the other one that has hopped in so far. That might not be it, but those are the two that are going. Maya, she was interviewed by Sons of Saturday. Was that you? Was it somebody else?
That was Billy, I think.
And then Ramaya White, I think, had some promise, but regardless, two girls that didn't play a ton this year were keeping so far. The core girls have, not announced anything. So we'll be hopeful there. Do you expect, because I think for the women, there's been a lot more portal entries across the country than there have been in years past, even more so than the men percentage wise.
Yeah, there's more money now. There's more money to women's basketball than there was, a couple of years ago. Those two left. I mean, Ramaya was a late ad after Duffy got hired. She flipped from Kentucky to Virginia Tech.
That's right.
And then Maya Hazelton was originally committed to Coach Brooks and kept her commitment and came to Virginia Tech with the staff change. So not overly surprising on either front there. I think you might see, one or two more, but really hopeful that the staff is able to retain the core group, and I think they'll be able to do that. And then you gotta replace Rose. That's gonna be a challenge. You got to also find a backup to whoever you replace Rose with, because that was a problem this year where Rose would go out or Rose would get in foul trouble, and then things got dicey. So got just kind of like the men's side, got to revamp that 5 position. And then, if you're able to retain the core group, another year in the system together, another year of development. For people forget, because we knew the names because they played so early in their career, but they're all still pretty young. And see where we can go from there. In addition to a good high school class coming in, Kate Sears and Amani Jenkins, and Duffy's recruited well too. So you'll have some freshmen who I think will push for playing time, similar to Kel Peterson this past year. So great first year. So close, like, to that NCAA tournament bid. Just one of those late season losses goes our way, and we probably sneak in the NCAA tournament. But Regardless, I think a lot to like and a lot to build on.
Yeah, I mean, if we could keep Karis Carly, Mackenzie Nelson, is Lonnie White a senior? Is she coming back?
She can come back.
That would be huge. Yeah, this team could be awesome. It could be a really good team, and Kale, of course, and add Kate Sears to that mix. Like it could be a really exciting team. Some other notes on women's basketball. One of the discussions that was happening on Twitter and in our chat was Georgia Amore's career came to an end. She had a chance at a last second shot in her NCAA tournament game, missed the shot. Um, she was asked about it afterwards and gave what I thought was a pretty good answer, considering that there's a tough circumstance to be asked that question. And I thought she gave a pretty good answer that her career isn't defined by one shot. And we hope as Tech fans that her career wasn't defined by one season, because she had such a long stretch of great seasons at Virginia Tech. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this, but I thought it should be brought up because we spent a lot of brain power on it today in the chat. I would like to see Georgia come back to a game wearing some Tech gear and kind of be re-embraced by the program, because if you go by like the NFL or the MLB standard, if she's going into like the women's college basketball Hall of Fame, she should go in as a Hokie, and we'd like to remember her as a Hokie. So do you think that's a relationship that down the road could be repaired, where she would kind of not be an ambassador for Tech, but just kind of be a member of the family again?
Yeah, she's a Hokie. That's 4 years, graduated from the school. Look, if there wasn't a global pandemic, this whole Kentucky thing's a non-issue, right? Like, the extra year and the extra opportunity to make money was presented by an extraordinary circumstance. But yeah, she's a Hokie, and I think she'll be back. Maybe we'll see her at a football game somewhere down the line. It is so crazy to me. I get reminded of this every year this time, that like the women's Final Four is like 5 days before the draft. It is crazy to turn around that
Yeah.
And then the draft rolls right into camp, which rolls right into the season. Like there's no break for these girls transitioning from college to the WNBA. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, one of the all-time great women's college basketball players. And you look at her resume and her stats, it's pretty incredible. I mean, she's on those lists with Sabrina Ionescu and Caitlin Clark, and the only 3 players to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. And yeah, great answer in that presser. I was watching the end of that game on my phone. Felt really bad for her to miss that shot, but she hit an amazing 3 to put it in overtime to begin with.
And I mean, she put them on her back in the game before. So,
and the game before, and the game before, and the
right,
game before.
Right.
She kind of carried that team this year. And I think in some way, shape, or form, that decision to leave probably helped her draft stock. I think seeing her do it in a new league without Liz probably helped her draft stock too.
I also think being in a draft without Caitlin Clark at point guard will help her draft stock. So that's the other thing about it. Like if Caitlin Clark's not in that last draft, maybe Georgia goes to the WNBA.
Well, I don't know. This one's pretty loaded too. I mean, you got Paige Beckers, Olivia Miles. I mean, there's a lot of good guards in women's college basketball who have the opportunity to come out this year. So it'll be interesting to see how her draft night unfolds. Selfishly, I hope she's a Mystic, because I think the Mystics have like 3 first-round draft picks or something crazy.
That'll be fun for the locals that want to go watch Georgia.
That would be fun. But yeah, great career, and I look forward to her return to Blacksburg for a football tailgate.
That would be fun. And so the last thing I had on just Kentucky was Silva, one of our former recruits. She never wore the uniform, right? She was just a recruit for us.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up going to Kentucky. Well, she's back in the portal. I wouldn't expect her to be coming to Virginia Tech, but I thought that was interesting nevertheless.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one. The girl was playing professional basketball in Portugal before committing to Virginia Tech, before going to Kentucky. Very skilled, but things didn't work out. Maybe didn't like the Kentucky weather. I don't know. I would anticipate someone like that maybe going to the West Coast. Who knows? We'll see what happens with her. But yeah, that was once a Hokie commit, now in the portal.
All right, Ed, that's gonna do it. I think I was going to maybe ask you about prospects for us to make the tournament next year, but I think I'm going to save that until our NBA draft episode. If we do that again, because then all of our portal commitments and current players that we hope are coming back will all be committed. We can kind of discuss the framework of the team then, and if we have a shot at the tournament, although that will still be very much a prediction. For now, that's going to do it for the show. Make sure you're subscribed to Sons of Saturday on YouTube, Sons of Saturday podcast feed on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as the Two Deep feed to catch all of me and Sam stuff. Sam and I are going to be back tomorrow night doing some football talk, among other things. But until next time, go Hokies.